Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Divine Detour Podcast. I am your host, Aura, and I wanted to take you with me on this new part of the journey. We are wrapping up Divine Wealth Detour Series, although wrapping up feels a little funny because we're never truly done with this work. But we are moving on to divine purpose. So I would say we're evolving, and shifting is really the wording for it. And I wanted to take you guys along with me. So I wanted to process something with you. I'm sure it doesn't come as a surprise to anyone listening to the Divine Wealth series that I struggle or struggled or probably will struggle with finances. Who hasn't? And from the messages I get from a lot of you, it seems doesn't matter where you land on the financial spectrum, we all do struggle. As someone who has a positive disposition, I've always been happy and thought I wasn't really into wealth or didn't care for it. It was really frustrating to me that I had to mix with it, struggle with it. And this idea of like trust and give it over to Hashem, I don't think it was ever explained to me correctly, and probably not to most of you guys correctly. And so I really wanted to understand, what does it mean to fully trust in Hashem? I understood it wasn't just pray. We were all told, pray to Hashem. That felt like some type of bypassing. But what does it mean? What did it mean to stop controlling or trying to control, because we never really have that control. Stop trying to control that financial flow. How do you not only understand this, but how do you practically do this? I really wanted to understand this. When I started the Divine Wealth podcast series, I was in the middle of doing the Artist's Way book by Julia Cameron. It is a 12-week course on artistic creative recovery. And I started it with my friend Sophia, and it was right after Pesach that we started it. And what we realized pretty quickly, because the Omer goes through after Pesach, is that the weeks were showing up with the Omer. So we were not only getting this structure of getting through creative blocks and blocks around abundance and self-worth, we were also getting it through this Jewish lens from each sphera, from Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, and how it showed up and worked together. And it was pretty wild. And through this process, I decided I really wanted to understand, and I really wanted to have these conversations around bitachon and money. I really wanted to understand it on a visceral level, not just something that's in my head. So I at first started having the conversations, and then I realized almost everybody struggles with finances. We really do. And it's such a taboo topic, which is also something very bothersome to me, because for those of you who know me, I want to talk about everything and I want to understand everything. And I understand that we do that through conversing with each other and getting new information from each other. So I had this idea to have these conversations on my podcast, call it Divine Wealth. Shout out to a friend who came up with that title, and really understand it with different rabbis, rebbitzins, manifestation coaches, self-made millionaires. Like, where does money and Hashem really connect? How do you surrender something that feels like survival? And throughout the podcast, there was different podcasts that really stood out for me. So the first one I would say was Rabbi Zion's. And if you haven't heard these, I would really recommend going back to listen, because I cannot do it justice. But I'm going to give you some insights from different podcasts that really stood out for me. So Rabbi Zion's really explained well what bitachon is. He really gets into the understanding of it. And the thing that he explained that a lot of people have repeated to me that's really helped them is that unless you're struggling, you cannot practice bitachon. If you are not struggling, and that's more than finances, right? It's finances, it's health, it's children. When you are struggling in one of these really important spaces in your life, then you have the opportunity to practice trusting Hashem and surrendering. And the other thing he really explained to me is that there's a massive difference between intellectually understanding an emotion and really feeling it in our body. And we get into this more with different interviewees. Then we have Nechama Schusterman, who Also, phenomenal podcast. And she really gets into the soul connection. Nechama really gets into self-worth and the act of receiving, which over the podcast course, I've come to realize is very important in the financial divine aspects of bitachon. I also really love Kathy Heller's. She teaches through the Jewish mysticism lens, and she talks a lot also about the law of receptivity, which is really important. That's receiving and what comes to us and based on our frequency. Now, talking about frequency, another really important podcast was Ayelet Polanski, who is a manifestation coach, and she explains all of these words that we're hearing in financial abundance, in manifestation, that no one really explains well. So for example, frequency. She explains frequency on such a easy, digestible level. I made a reel about it, and I actually have over 50,000 views on that reel. And I'm sharing that with you because it means it really spoke to people. My numbers aren't even close to that usually. That definitely was a viral reel for me. But she explained, I've listened to it multiple times, because when you start talking about bitachon and trust and feeling it somatically, feeling those energies in your body and what that means, and then stepping into power, like people are throwing these phrases out left and right and trusting Hashem. What does that physically mean? What does that mean in reality? And Ayelet really goes into depth on how to explain that so it's understandable. So you understand when someone says you need to get into a different frequency, what that means, and how does that mean in Jewish mysticism, and how does that mean in Hasidus work. And then we have Rona and Tova Eastman, and they talk a lot about moving from scarcity into trust, into bitachon, because we can talk about having trust all day, but if you are in lack, which a lot of us are or are starting off in this journey, where's the movement? How do you get from one to the other? And these are all really important conversations. And from all of them, and I'll talk about Marilyn's podcast a little later on in this episode, but from all of them, what my understanding of all of this is a lifelong journey for everybody. And when you get into flow, things start changing drastically. Into flow means to me, into connection with Hashem, into connection with your source, into not only saying, I'm surrendering, I am trusting, but feeling it. What does that feel like in your body? And it's not so much about what you do, it's about what you feel and how you feel it in your mind, in your body, and obviously very much in your soul. Here's what people don't tell you, that this process, this learning, this bitachon, it is really hard work. This is not just a simple understanding. This is lifelong work. It has taken me decades. I'm 43. It has taken me decades to get to this awareness. And I'm barely scratching the surface. And I'm going deeper still. And when you learn something and you understand something, then you realize there's so much more to learn. So I understand I will be learning this for a very long time. I also am in a Shar B'Tachon weekly group class that we study this idea, and I highly recommend all of you guys out there to create one if you don't have one, or join one. There's a lot of them going on in different cities. Major shout out to my Atlanta women's group, because not only has it given me something to understand on a soul level, it also brings it into reality, which is really important, because we don't live in the esoteric world. We live in this world, and we're meant to bring all these ideas and concepts into reality. So this is lifelong work, and we'll be exploring this for a long time. And I want to share something crucial with you guys, that there is one step before bitachon that seems to keep being missed, and that is acknowledgement. Acknowledging that there's a huge problem, pointing to it, looking at it, grieving it. You can't just bypass straight to I trust Hashem when you are feeling lack and scarcity and survival and terror in your body. You need to look at that first. And that gets me to the place of surrender, of trusting in Hashem. Abundance is not knowing where it all ends or even what's around the corner. It's just asking Hashem what the next step is and trusting that you'll be able to go in that direction. And that is with divine wealth, and that is with divine purpose, which we will be heading into in a strong way in this new series. And this brings us to where we're heading, the new series called Divine Purpose. And divine purpose are the skills that we have naturally that we give in service or we bring to the world to help it and give it in service of some way, in some form. And what I know now very strongly is that giving and receiving are part of the same circle. They're part of the same spectrum. And in my Divine Wealth Series podcast with Marilyn Hershenson, who is an incredible therapist, she talks a lot about this idea that when you give of service to this world, that is your purpose. And then the money will come, and then you will receive. And it's really important that you learn how to receive, not just because you have to receive, but with grace, with joy, knowing that everything is coming from Hashem, everything that you're receiving. And when you give from your skills, your natural skills of who you are and your makeup, your divine makeup, that will guide you to your divine purpose. And then your receiving comes in, right? And that wealth, that receiving of whatever it is, that is your divine wealth of alignment. And so I really want to explore this idea of divine purpose. When I was a kid, story time, my mother told me that I came to her when I was really young and I was like, what are my talents? And she laughed because what kid asked that? I was always curious about life. What are my talents? And I think on some soul level, I understood that my talents is one of the reasons I am here. God gives us all different talents, and we're supposed to use that for this world, for the people around us, for ourselves. And that's part of divine purpose. But then the question is, for those who don't know what their divine purpose is, how do we find it? How do we discover it? What if you can't really understand your talents? Or what if you have talents, but you don't know how to use it in the world? Or what if you're not using anything? Does that mean you're not living to your highest potential? Or is your purpose just you being born into this world? There's a quote I love that the moment you were born into this world was God saying that the world could not exist another second without you. And if that's true, then you shouldn't have to do anything to live your purpose. So these are all some ideas and questions that I have that I want to deep dive into with some really special people. Today is my first Divine Purpose podcast recording that I'll be doing, and I cannot wait to explore these ideas and these concepts with you and get to the bottom of how do we discover what we're meant to do in this world, or who we're meant to be, or if just being ourselves and lighting ourselves up is the purpose, is the point. So thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me. And on that note, I will be giving a shout out. I am starting a new Artist Way Forward group. That is what I call my series of what I do with Julia Cameron's Artist Way. I am starting it the week after Pesach with the Omer, like I did the first time around, that totally transformed me, that brought you this podcast series back, the Wealth, the Rosh Chodesh, the Divine Purpose, and all the series that will be coming forward from this. And so if anyone is feeling blocked or uncreative or scarcity or needing involvement or shifting in any way, please reach out to me. We will start the week after Pesach. I am keeping it to a 12-person group. intimate groups are really important in this process. And I am so excited to explore all this with you guys. And please check out my Instagram. I will be posting testimonials from my past group that we just finished 2 weeks ago, which was wonderful and was such an honor to lead. And I thank you all for being here. I thank you all for listening. I thank you all for reaching out. It means so much to me. Divine Purpose is starting up next week. I cannot wait to explore all this with you. Until then, you can ask yourself, Hashem, what's my next step? And play with it and see what happens. And I do have people sponsoring these podcasts, and there's many ways you can help this podcast move along into the world. So there's always liking, there's always subscribing. Sharing is a big one. Share it with friends or family or someone you know who might need it. You could share it privately on text, on WhatsApp, and emails. You can also share it publicly on Instagram or Facebook. That really helps level up. There's also sponsorship and contribution available. Please reach out to me for that. You can sponsor a podcast in honor or in memory of someone dear to you. If you have a business, you can collaborate with me and we can get your business advertised. That's always a really fun way to go. And just reaching out and telling me that this is speaking to you and you need it means a lot too. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I can't wait to explore the next series with y'all.